Today, I have 5 puzzles for you that seem completely different. Here are 3 of them. In the first, you're a burglar working a street of houses. Every house has cash inside, and any 2 neighbors share an alarm. In the second, you're comparing 2 words, looking for the letters they have in common. And in the third, you're popping balloons for coins, where every pop changes what the neighbors pay out. To someone who's practiced though, these aren't different puzzles at all, and that's why I'm making this video. Each one is asking the same 2 questions. Where are you, and what do you choose next? And for the vast majority of dynamic programming problems that an interviewer will hand you, that first answer, where are you, takes one of about 5 recurring shapes. A while back I made a video about the machinery of dynamic programming, such as recurrences, memoization, and bottom-up tables. That one was more of an intro, and it didn't really cover the reasoning. So this video expands on the step that comes before everything else, how you see the state. In the rest of this video, we're going to work through 5 problems together and find the state in each one. We will do that until you can read it straight off the problem statement. Let's start on that street. The 5 houses hold 2, 7, 9, 3, and 1, let's say in thousands of dollars. If you rob 2 houses right next to each other, the shared alarm ends your night early. So, what's the most money you can walk away with? The simplest approach is just to try every combination that doesn't trip an alarm. House 1 plus 3, 1 plus 4, 2 plus 5, and so on. And for 5 houses, it genuinely works. There are about a dozen combinations. But watch how many there are as the street grows. At 30 houses, you are somewhere in the millions, and brute force stops being an option. So instead of thinking about the whole street, let's stand in front of one house, house 5. To decide what to do at this house, what's the only thing you actually need to know about everything behind you? Take a second with that. Whatever combination of houses you wrote back there, the only thing that matters now is the best total you could have banked up to house 4, and the best total up to house 3. All that chaos behind you collapses into 2 numbers. Because standing at house 5, you've only got 2 options. If you skip it, your total is whatever the best was up to house 4. And if you rob it, the alarm rules out the house 4, so your total is the best up to house 3, plus what's inside house 5. Take whichever is bigger. That's the entire recurrence. Okay, let's run it. Best up to house 1, that's 2. House 2, skip or rob, that's 7. House 3, 7, or 2 plus 9, that's 11. Now pause and try house 4 for yourself. If you said 11, you've got it. 3 plus 7 is only 10, and 10 loses. Let's go to house 5. The best next door, that's 11, or the best from 2 back, 11 plus 1 inside, that's 12. Done. And a street of 30 houses would take 30 of these steps, not millions. Which house you're standing at, that's the state. What we store for each state means something concrete. The best total you can get up to this house. Each answer needs 2 earlier answers, and the decision, skip or rob, picks between them with a max. So every dynamic programming solution has the same 5 parts. A state, what it means, what it needs, what it decides, and how it combines. We just saw all 5 on this street, and the same 5 parts will show up in every pattern in this video. One more thing before we move on. The state never asked you about how you robbed those 4 houses. However you got there, the future only wanted the best total. Remember that, we'll use it on a harder problem in a few minutes. So what in the problem statement told us the state would be a single index? The problem hands you one sequence, you walk it in order, and each decision leans only on answers for earlier positions. That's the first of our 5 shapes, one line of positions, so the state is just one number. We have 4 patterns to go, and each one goes quicker now that you know the method. So a single coordinate handled the street. Here's the natural next question. What happens when it takes 2 numbers just to say where you are? In the next problem, you are standing on top left corner of a grid, and every cell has a toll you pay to step on it. You can only move right or down, and you want to reach the bottom right corner paying as little as possible. Brute force doesn't work here either. You could trace every path and keep the cheapest, but a 15 by 15 grid already has about 40 million paths. So let's forget the whole grid for a second. To know the cheapest way into this one cell, what do you actually need? Well, there are only 2 ways in. from above or from the left. So all you need is the cheapest way into those two neighbors. Take the cheaper one, add this cell stole, and that's it. We fill the grid row by row, each cell just looking up and looking left, and the answer drops out at the bottom right corner, which is 7. And if you saw my last video, this exact grid is where we counted paths. Same state in the row and the column, only what each cell means and how answers combined changed. You might already see where this is going. This one is the easiest to recognize, because the hint is right in the problem statement. You're given a grid, and your moves through it are restricted. So where you are in a row and a column, that's the state. Both of those coordinates pointed at places, which are cells you could draw. This next puzzle adds something new, a state coordinate that doesn't have to be a place at all. Let's say I hand you a list of numbers, 3, 1, 5, 9, 12, and I ask, can you split these into two piles with exactly the same sum? Brute force says try every split. 32 ways for 5 numbers, that's fine. What about 40 numbers? That's about 1 trillion. These numbers add up to 30, so each pile has to hit 15. That means we only need to build one pile that sums to 15, because the leftovers automatically form the other one. Now, let's walk the list one number at a time, and for each one decide, take it or skip it. Standing in the middle of the list, what do you have to remember for the rest of your decisions to even make sense? You need to know how far into the list you are. Sure, that's the houses again. But that's not enough anymore, because whether the rest can work depends on how much of the 15 you still owe. Take the 5 and now you only need 10 more. So you're carrying 2 numbers now. Your position in the list and the budget you have left. And that second number is the new idea here. A budget isn't a place. Your position points at a tile you can see, but the budget is something you carry along as you go. That's the idea that cracks open this whole family of problems. The decision at each number is the same one. Take it or skip it. If you skip it, you still owe the same amount. If you take it, you owe that much less. That's a fork at every number, so there are a lot of paths through this list, and we just need one that lands on 0. Let's walk one of the paths. Start owing 15. Take the 3, now you owe 12. Skip the 1, skip the 5, still 12. Now the 9, take it, and you'd owe 3, but the only number that's left is 12, which is too big. That's dead end. So let's come back and skip the 9 instead. You still owe 12, and the last number is exactly 12. Take it, and you owe nothing. The 3 and the 12 make one pile, the 1, 5, and 9 make the other. Both add up to 15. Now, why is this fast? Let's put every situation you could be in on a table. A row for each number in the list, and a column for each budget you could still owe. Any way of walking the list, what it takes and what it skips, is just a path through this table, one row at a time. Let's watch 2 different histories. The first takes the 3, the 1, and the 5, it owes 6. And the second skips everything except the 9, and it also owes 6. Different choices the whole way down, but the same cell. And remember the street. The state never cared how you got there. From that cell on, those 2 histories have exactly the same future, so you work it out once. Scale list up to 40 numbers, and it's every position times every budget you could still owe. That's a few thousand cells, not 1 trillion paths. Now look at the problem statement again. Each number can be used at most once, so you track where you are in the list. There's also a target to hit, so you track how much of it is left. This one is called Knapsack, after the classic backpacking puzzle. A budget is one reason you'd need a second coordinate. Another is 2 words to compare. Take horse and rose. What's the longest sequence of letters that shows up in both, in the same order, not necessarily next to each other? Here you can keep O, S, E, 3 letters. This problem is called longest common subsequence, and it's similar to what your diff tool does when it compares 2 versions of a file. Brute force will check every subsequence of the first word against the second, about 1 million for a 20-letter word, doubling with every letter. So brute force is not an option here too. You know the question by now. You're walking both words at the same time, so what pins down exactly where you are? And notice that one number isn't enough. Being at position 3 in horse tells you basically nothing about how far you've gotten in the word rose. You need your position in the first word and in the second. The state is the pair. Let's lay out that as a grid. Horse down the side, rose across the top. Every cell is one pair of positions, and the number in it means exactly one thing. how many letters those two beginnings share. So the top left cell compares just H and just R, and the bottom right corner compares the whole words. That corner is the answer we're after. Once you know what a cell means, the decision is simple. Look at the two letters you're pointing at. If they match, count them and step both pointers forward. If they don't, one of them has to go. Try skipping each, and keep the better result. And that second case is what fills most of this table. A cell with no match just copies the bigger of the two neighbors it can reach. Let's fill it in the way the code would, row by row, left to right. I won't read out every cell, but watch them all land. Start at H against R, no match, and there's nothing before either letter, so the cell holds 0. Now O against O, that's a match. Take the best from before both letters, 0, and count the match, 1. Further along, the S is match, that's 2. And the E's, 3. And you can see the no match cells copying their best neighbors as we go. So the bottom right corner holds the answer for the full words, 3. The O, S, E, we spotted by I at the start. And the hint here is the input itself. The problem gives you two sequences and asks how they relate, so the state is a position in each. This family is usually called alignment. By the way, added distance is the same pattern, turning one word into another in the fewest single letter edits. It just compares 3 moves at each step instead of 2. 2 strings on the way in means you already know what the table looks like. And 2 indices don't have to live on different sequences at all. You have one word this time. Let's say B, C, C, A, B. What's the longest palindrome you can make by deleting letters? Drop the A and you're left with B, C, C, B, which reads the same in both directions. That's 4. This one works differently. You can't move through it left to right with a single pointer, because whether something is a palindrome depends on both ends at the same time. So let's start at the edges. Look at the first letter and the last letter together. If they match, they become the outer shell of your palindrome, and the problem shrinks to whatever sits between them. If they don't, one of the two is useless. Drop the left or drop the right, and keep the better of the two. Notice what just happened to the state. If you're thinking it doesn't look like any of the earlier ones, you're right. You're tracking a range now. A left edge and a right edge closing inward. That's the interval pattern. Now let's use ranges on a harder problem, the balloons from the beginning of the video. Here's the setup. You're given a row of balloons and each balloon has a number on it. When you pop a balloon, you win points. Its number times the numbers on its two neighbors. The popped balloon is gone, so the balloons on either side of it become neighbors. You pop all of them one by one and you want the most points in total. Let's see it once. Pop the 1 and you win 3 times 1 times 5, 15 points. And now the 3 and the 5 are next to each other. That's exactly what makes this problem hard. Every pop changes the neighbors, so an early pop changes what every later pop is worth. One small fix before we solve it. The first and the last balloon only have one neighbor each. So imagine an extra balloon with a 1 on it at each side. Multiplying by 1 changes nothing, it just makes every pop work the same way. How do we actually solve this? We just learned to think in ranges. Let's use that here. The key idea is this. Don't choose which balloon to pop first. Choose which balloon you'll pop last. Say the 5 is the last. Then the 5 stays on the board until the very end. Everything on its left gets popped while the 5 is still there, and the same on its right. The two sides can never touch each other because the 5 is always between them. So we can solve the left side on its own, solve the right side on its own, and add one final pop at the end. 1 times 5 times 1. That's one candidate for the last balloon. But solve the left side on its own hides a step, so let's do it. The left side is the 3 and the 1 sitting between the wall and the 5. It's the same question, one size smaller. Which of these two pops last? Say the 3 pops last. Then pop the first one. Its neighbors are the 3 and the 5. So 3 times 1 times 5, 15. Then the 3, now between the wall and the 5. 1 times 3 times 5, another 15. 30 total. If the 1 pops last instead, the same steps only collect 8. So the best for that little range is 30. The right side is just the 8. 5 times 8 times 1, 40. And now the 5's candidate is complete. 30 from the left, 40 from the right, plus the final pop, 5. That's 75. And notice the order we just worked in. To price the whole row, we needed answers for the smaller ranges inside it first. That's the plan for this entire pattern. Solve every 1 balloon range, then every 2 balloon range, and keep growing. So by the time you ask about a big range, every smaller range inside it is already done. Let's give a name to what we've just built, using the same 5 parts from the street. The state is a range of balloons, a left end and a right end. What we store for a range means the most points you can win by popping everything inside it. Each answer needs the answers for the smaller ranges inside it. The decision is which balloon in the range goes last, and each choice combines 3 numbers, the best for the left piece, the best for the right piece, plus the final pop itself. Try every choice, keep the biggest, and that's the whole recurrence. So let's finish our 4 balloons. We already worked out one candidate. If the 5 goes last, the total is 75. Now do the same for the other 3. If the 3 goes last, 162. If the 1 goes last, 52. And if 8 goes last, 167. For candidates, the best one is 167, so the 8 pops last. Each of those candidates leans on its own smaller pieces, exactly the way the 5 leaned on the 3 and 1. The table underneath is just every range's answer, built small to large. The part that matters is what we just did. We read the state of the problem, and the recurrence followed from it. So that's the 5th hint. When the answer for a whole range depends only on smaller ranges inside it, you're tracking a left edge, a right edge, and trying every candidate in between. Alright, let's put the whole system on one screen. The chart checks the most obvious hints first, so it runs in a different order than the video did. Start at the top. Does the problem give you 2 sequences to compare? Then your state is probably a position in each, and that's the alignment pattern. If not, does it give you a grid where you can only move in a certain direction? Then your state is your row and your column. Next, are you picking items from a list to hit a target? Then it's your position in the list plus how much of the target is left. After that, is the problem about a range that shrinks or splits, like the palindrome or the balloons? Then your state is the 2 ends of the range. And if it's none of those, but you're moving through one sequence step by step, your state is usually just your position, DP of I. And none of these branches are guarantees, by the way. They're just suggestions. If none of them fit, ask the underlying question directly. What does the future still need to know? Sometimes it's an extra mode you have to track, sometimes a tree or a graph, and sometimes a bit mask over what you've used. And sometimes it isn't dynamic programming at all. Let's try it once on a problem we haven't seen. You're trading a stock with a cooldown. You want to maximize your profit from prices day by day, and after you sell, you have to sit out one day. You're given one sequence of prices and you move through it day by day, so the chart says linear. But ask what the future needs, and a day number alone isn't enough. Tomorrow's options depend on whether you're holding the stock, you're free, or you're cooling down. So the state is the day plus a small mode. Best of day and mode means the most you could have earned through that day, ending in that mode. End it holding and tomorrow you can sell. End it free and tomorrow you can buy. End it cooling and tomorrow you sit out. And from there, the solution follows the same recipe as everything else today. For each day and each mode, try actions you're allowed, buy, sell, or wait, and keep the one that earns the most. Walk the days left to right, building each one out of the day before, and the answer is the most you could have earned by the last day. This chart is the whole video on one screen. Screenshot it or grab it as a free one-page PDF from the link in the description. Once the chart points you at a candidate state, write the one sentence that locks it in. DP of this means. From there, the rest is just the machinery you can practice. Write the recurrence, memorize it, flip it to bottom up. If that part feels difficult, my last video walks through all of it, link on the screen. Before you go, there's one last thing. All 5 shapes are the same move. Define a state, try every decision available, and combine the answers the way the question asks. The max, the mean, a count, or a simple yes or no. Then solve each state once, no matter how many ways you got there. That's all 5 patterns. I'm thinking about building a full dynamic programming course. If you want that, join my newsletter, link in the description, and leave a comment on this video so I know there is interest. I put a lot into this one, so if it helped, a like genuinely helps me more than you think. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.